Let's see. Welcome.
Let's see how it sounds.
How's the audio?
Wait, you'll probably ask it soon.
I just hear a bunch of background noise. Okay, do you hear it? Nice. So we're waiting for a couple of people to trickle in. Wow, look at this. The room filled up.
I already have comments.
The audio is spectacular. Okay, that's what I like to hear. What's up, legend? When you coming to the village, bro? Gotta see you in a bit. Maybe we turn the screen a little bit so it shows the...
Oh yeah, but eventually I'll put this as the biggest thing. So
Nice. Okay, so then we're good anyway. Maybe we start in a minute or two. Welcome. You reckon we get started? Fib?
Yeah.
Good to go? Okay, cool. Thank you for the 21 live listeners and the other 20 people in the audience. Thank you for coming to today's presentation. We're going to be talking about launching your Web3 project. We're not going to be able to go through like a full in-depth of how to do that, but we'll touch on some key components. So I want to get started by talking about what is MCA. So MCA is a company I work for. Our goal is to be like the Mackenzie Bain BCG of crypto. We've been around for 3 years. We help pretty much with strategy, marketing, partnerships, and helping early stage startups with their growth. A little bit about myself. So I'm Hash. I'm the COO of Multi-Chain Advisors. I have 5+ years in the accounting finance area in Canada. Worked for KPMG, Kimberly Clark, and CIBC, among some other notable companies. Been in crypto for about 8 years, so it's been quite the long journey. And I joined Multi-Chain 3 years ago as its second employee. Cool. So Multi-Chain's launched over 70 companies in the last 3 years. We've helped our companies raise over $100 million and gain over 10 million in social growth. Some notable clients that we've had are like Pit Network, Zeus Network, Helio Pay, Wormhole. The list kind of goes on. We've worked on kind of every sector in crypto more or less for the last 3 years. So this is actually my third workshop. I've done 2 other ones. So if you haven't already checked them out, I did one about 2 weeks ago on product market fit, and I also did one on pitching. So if you need help on any of those 2, you guys should go check that out. And also this will build upon some of the stuff I've touched in the past. So everything's recorded. You can check that out. Cool. So what are we going to be talking about today? First, I'm going to talk about the scope, because as I mentioned, like in a 30-minute presentation, I'm not going to give you like the whole rundown of how to launch a Web3 project. We're going to have to like narrow the scope. So I kind of focused on specific parts that I feel like will be valuable for a founder, someone running a project. We're going to talk about basic business fundamentals, roadmaps, basic tools, Web3 marketing, more insights on Web3 marketing, why marketing isn't enough, common pitfalls and red flags, and then just an example from a client of ours, and then we'll set aside a little bit of time to do some AMAs. So what is required for a successful launch? This is just like the tip of the iceberg, as you guys can see, it faded out a little bit, but there's a lot that's required when you're trying to launch a project, right? Whether that's from the marketing angle, whether that's from a research angle, whether that's like your go-to-market strategy, your community building, partnerships, airdrops, sex listings, the list just goes on. There's a lot. Obviously, I'm not going to be able to cover all of this in 30 minutes. So today, we will be talking mainly on go-to-market strategy, business fundamentals, marketing exposure and marketing strategy. And even on these topics, we'll just be touching on a little high level. So the hard truth is most businesses fail. This is a stat from based on US businesses in the private sector. 1 in 5 businesses fail in the first year. Another 50% of them fail in about the 5-year mark. And by the 10-year mark, 2/3 of businesses that have started will no longer exist. Now you add the fact that we're in the crypto market that's extremely volatile. We're working with rapidly innovative technology. There's intense competition, limited mindshare / audience, and an audience that lacks patience. You can probably imagine that the chances of succeeding in crypto are much harder than traditional businesses. That doesn't mean you got to be pessimistic or scared. It's just you need to understand that when you're launching a product, you're essentially launching a business. And every business has some fundamentals. These are some areas that I've kind of highlighted that you should kind of focus on to some extent. Any business needs to understand their objective. Most of the business's objective is to make money. Even a nonprofit needs contributions in order to run their operations. So you got to figure out how you're going to make money. You got to figure out what goals you're trying to achieve. If you're in specific sectors, you might want to be like a market leader, or you might want to launch your product and get users. There's going to be all sorts of goals that you have to organize. You obviously need money to get started, right? So that's just something that's very basics. You need to have strong financial management. A lot of people can raise a lot of money and then they tend to spend all their money and then they end up becoming broke, right? So being able to understand your financial management and be capital efficient is very important. Having a strong core team is important. Having great product market fit, which you guys can go check out my other workshop to understand how to get better product market fit. And then having a strong plan to achieve success, discipline and drive, key supporters, and last but not least, being extremely optimistic. These are kind of the very basic requirements of what you would need to launch a product and launch a business. So let's talk about a roadmap. A lot of people, I mean, as Mike Tyson said, everyone has a plan that they get punched in the face. There's a lot of focus on roadmaps in this space. I like to break it down into 2. There's a public roadmap and a private roadmap. When launching a product, direction is key. If you don't know what you're trying to do, if you don't know where you're trying to go, you're probably not going to get there, right? So I've split into 2, and I'm going to explain a little bit as to what each is. So when you're launching a product, there should be a public roadmap that you show your audience. I often suggest for early stage startups and founders to keep this as vague as possible because the crypto audience expects a lot. The more you promise, if you're promising a lot that you can't deliver on, you're going to ultimately get a lot of FUD and pushback that's going to ultimately harm your business. So you want to show your audience that there is hope. So you give them, crumbs and kind of some high-level direction as to where you're going. You want to be able to use your public roadmaps to build anticipation and help with speculation, which in this space is very important. You want to create expectations to some extent, but realistic expectations, right? You don't want to create expectations that's going to allow you to, get screwed or create this false objective that you're going to be able to achieve that you don't end up achieving, and then you end up getting the backlash for that. This typically buys you time, right? Obviously, development takes a long time, relatively, right? In this space, because people have short attention spans, by releasing public roadmaps, you're able to buy yourself a little bit of time because you're pushing out on future developments and things that you want to achieve. This helps your team become accountable, right? When you say something publicly, you kind of have to get it done, more or less. So sometimes creating realistic expectations and publicizing that can keep your team accountable in achieving these goals. And as I mentioned before, you want to try to keep these public roadmaps vague because it allows you to have flexibility. We're in a rapidly changing adaptive environment. Without flexibility, you're going to screw yourself. Now, the private roadmap. This is something that I typically suggest when you're launching a product to have internally always, right? If you don't know what you're trying to do, if you don't know what the next product update is, if your team doesn't have alignment, you're going to have a very hard time achieving things, right? So being and having a private roadmap, you need to be able to understand that it needs to be extremely adaptive. Nothing is fixed. You need to be able to make quick changes, and you need to allow yourself to better coordinate launches using your roadmap internally. So always have a public roadmap to some extent that's vague, and then have a private roadmap that's going to give your team alignment and direction. So what are the basic tools of Web3 marketing? Most of the people who've been in the space already know what these are, but in a conversation with Simon, he wanted me to kind of like touch on what is the utility and usage of these different tools. So there's 4 tools I have here in IRL events. Our primary tool in Web3 is pretty much crypto, right? Most people, most degens, most investors spend a lot of time in crypto. That's your primary modes of communication. Most of your media, PR stuff goes through Twitter. Most of your key announcements will go through Twitter. Most of your key marketing campaigns will go through Twitter, right? So if there's one tool that you had to choose and you had no other capability to do anything else, Twitter will be your primary tool of marketing your product, especially when you're trying to launch a product, right? Telegram is used for more announcements. Your strategic groups, your groups with investors, your groups with KOLs, your groups with key whales, all of that happens on Telegram, right? You also use Telegram to get a little bit more of a wider audience. Not everyone's spending a lot of time on Twitter. Maybe some of these traders are spending a lot of time in their private Telegram chats. Being able to leverage your Telegram chats to have strategic communications is something that's valuable, right? And a lot of one-on-one conversations, you're not going to be talking to someone on Twitter in the DMs, right? You're probably going to be talking to them on Telegram. Discord is used for community management. You also typically suggest using this for tech support. If you have a product that has bugs, if you have UX changes that people suggest, you want to be able to get that community feedback very seamlessly. So having Discord and being able to use these ticket stuff. And the nice thing about Discord is you can even lay out different types of tickets that you can then prioritize, right? So maybe a tech support ticket is significantly more important than maybe a UX change, for example. And then it's also used for community building. Not a lot of people use this as much as they should. A client of ours that does a really good job with this is Pit Network. They pretty much have like their whole council thing in Discord. They do all sorts of memes and different competitions and contests. They have this whole like healthy initiative that they're doing with a lot of the Pithinians. There's a lot of flexibility and a lot of nuance that you can use Discord for, especially when it comes to building a very strong core group of supporters, right? So you can do games, you can do quests, you can do campaigns. There's a lot you can do. So definitely leveraging that on the community building side. And last but not least, LinkedIn, right? Why do you use LinkedIn? I mean, primarily using LinkedIn to hire people. It's still primarily where you get a lot of good talent. Finding talent in the space is really hard. Finding really good talent on LinkedIn and kind of introducing them into the Web3 space is slightly easier than hiring inside of the space. You can use it to build up your professional brand. You can use it towards doing Web2 specific marketing. This is typically for larger businesses that have enough growth in the Web3 side that they're looking for new users. Some of these new users are going to be on LinkedIn. So this is kind of a high level as to how you would use these tools and where you would use them. And last but not least, IRL events. I mean, IRL events are super important. I mean, we're at an IRL event right now, right? The Startup Village. Here's where you meet a lot of like-minded individuals. Here's where you build your community. If you have a project, you can start a lot of partnerships with the people you meet at IRL events. And if you're raising money, you're probably going to do it in person, right? Because if you're asking for $1 million, they probably want to meet you in person and see if you're legit, right? And last but not least, hiring, right? As you meet people in the space and you go to these events and conferences, meeting them in person and getting a coffee or something is probably going to help you kind of vet them out better than if it was like a virtual interview. Cool. So basics of Web3 marketing. Right over here at the corner, I have engagement percentage by days. This is a pretty interesting stat. Typically, your best day to actually post on Twitter is on Wednesdays, about 20% higher engagement versus Sundays, which is like 7.3. So if you post on Twitter on Wednesdays, you almost have like a 2.2x higher engagement rate than if you did Sundays. So typically, I suggest you have your strongest announcements between Monday to Thursday. If you have bad news you got to release, do that on Friday, because people are going into the weekend and they're probably not going to check it as much. And then if you have really positive news, typically Monday, Tuesday, and then kind of trickles, allows people to like retweet. If you're doing coordinated post, you can kind of release something Monday, Tuesday, and then use Wednesday and Thursday to amplify things. Consistency is key. Typically, I would say 1 to 2 posts a day is good. These are from the main accounts. Typically, you'd use, if you're setting up a company, you might want to do your main communications from your primary Twitter account, and then you might have a founder Twitter account that you can use a little bit for like thought leadership and stuff. So depending on what your strategy is on Twitter, if you only have one Twitter account, you want to have at least 1 to 2 posts a day. That's kind of going towards different announcements or even like macro specific content that you can comment on. You want to really refine content calendar. I didn't have enough time to kind of go through that this presentation, but content calendars are essentially your scheduling of what sort of content is going to be going in the next couple of weeks. You always want to pre-plan that, at least on the very basis. Typically for our clients, we have at least a month, at least a rough idea of the next month's worth of content, at the very least. And sometimes we have like 3 months worth. So you want to be able to refine that and really surround your marketing around key announcements. Less is more. You don't need to post 50 times a day unless you're a meme coin. You want to be able to post really high quality content. And as long as you're able to get really good engagement on those pieces of content, you're good, right? And the more frequent you post on a daily basis, you're actually cannibalizing your own engagement. So if people are seeing your 10 pieces of content only getting like sub 1,000 impressions, it's not a good look for your business. Marketing is an amplifier, right? So you can't just assume that marketing is going to be enough for you to like launch a successful project, and we'll get to that too. But you want to be able to use your marketing to support narratives. You want to be able to use your marketing to support product launches, and you want your marketing to help the fundamentals of your business. It's important to keep a pulse on macro. Right here, if something got copier/curator, the truth is most people in crypto Twitter and who do Web3 marketing in general are typically copying their content from someone else. There's a very select handful of people who I'd consider curators. These are the market leaders and marketing, and Phantom's a really good example of that. Magic Eden's a good example of that. These are like the leaders who have a shit ton of resources to spend on marketing, and they're testing tons of content, and their idea of marketing is very dialed in, right? So as a new founder, as a project starter, as a project founder, you don't necessarily need to become a curator immediately. You're going to understand what your tone is. You're going to understand what your message is over time. I would suggest it's better for you to be a copier initially and understand what your competitors are posting about, understand what the market leaders are posting about, and curate your content based on them, and then eventually discover your own voice, which will take some time. Last but not least, I mean, I got a couple more points here actually, but reply guy stuff, this is pretty basic, right? If there's a market leader or a thought leader who's posting on a specific area in which your business is operating on, you should be reply guy, right? That's how you get yourself out there. It's just the very basics. Thought leadership, being informative. You want to be a thought leader, right? If you're able to post very curated, very educational content, people will respect that, right? So if you're able to kind of push these new innovations and thoughts forward, you'll get the reward for that too. Setting leading competition, having your big announcements from Monday to Thursday, and then using numbers. You want to flex your numbers. People love numbers. You also want to be leveraging mindshare data. This is something that's relatively new, I would say in the last like 6 months. I mean, people were using mindshare and stats for a long time. Even during the NFT days, we had like NFT Inspect, which would show you who's the top KOL and their influence and all that sort of stuff. Nowadays, we have a lot more robust tools. I have two on the screen over here. Cookie.fun and Cato are both fantastic, right? So being able to even the fact that Cato has your top 100 Cato yappers, spending a little bit of time looking through those top 100 posters, seeing what they're posting, what their styles are, can give you a lot of insights from a marketing perspective. So you want to be able to constantly leverage mindshare data in order to figure out what your own content can capitalize on and what people are actually talking about, and aligning yourselves with those topics. It's very easy, basic stuff that a lot of people overlook, but can provide tons of exposure. So why is marketing not enough? Okay, we just talked about marketing for the last 5 minutes, but the truth is, and even for us we position ourselves as a consulting firm instead of a marketing agency, because the truth is, marketing itself is important, it's necessary, but it's not everything, right? If you don't have good product market fit, it's just like putting a bandage over a broken vase, right? If you have flawed tokenomics and there's no value to token, you can be marketing all you want. You can be getting all the market share, mind share, and you're not going to be able to get your token to go up in value, right? If you have a lack of innovation directive, if you have poor product design, if your team alignment is off and there's a lot of beef and chaos that's going inside your team, you're probably not going to be that successful, right? And having a pulse on market changes and being adaptive is very important. For example, if you're doing an NFT product right now and you're trying to raise for NFTs when NFTs are kind of dead, it doesn't matter how strong your marketing is, you're just going to have a really big uphill battle, right? So being on top of trends, being able to understand what is hot and what's going on, and understanding that what you're building has a market is what's going to help your marketing be better, right? Marketing is an amplifier. It's not the be-all, end-all solution for everything, unless you're trying to do a pump and dump, right? And even then, there's not a lot of sustainability to that. The best meme coins are actually the ones that are run like a business, right? And we've seen that with Bonk. We've seen that with With. Some of these very large meme coins have extremely complicated business structures that are often overlooked. Common marketing pitfalls. Yeah, I listed quite a few. There's way more than this, but very basics, guys, design consistency, right? Don't be posting something with green and then go to red and then go to purple. It's going to confuse your users, right? Having good consistency, having a good base design that you're able to build it on and kind of modify is necessary. A lack of consistency, right? You don't want to post once and then wait a week and then post again. You're not going to be able to build constant traction. Marketing is aligned with big product news and innovations. Just talking about what's going on in the macro isn't going to get people to be aligned with your product, right? You're just going to be a really good yapper, and you're not going to be someone who's going to bring traction to your products, right? Marketing isn't on trend, having good pulse check, non-optimized content categories. Content categories are pretty much the split in which you post information. Maybe 20% of your post are product updates, 15% of them is based on marketing campaigns that you're doing at the time, 10% is KOL posts, et cetera, right? Each sector of crypto is going to have a different content category. Understanding what your content category is and optimizing for that is necessary. Non-adaptive marketing, lack of marketing campaigns, hype with no delivery, lack of reply guy stuff, lack of partnerships, and co-marketing and lack of substance in your marketing post are all common pitfalls. Cool. So let's talk about a client of ours, which is Momentum. So Momentum is the fastest growing DEX on SUI. In less than, I guess, 40, 50 days, they're almost at 2 billion in swap volume. We were able to get them from 0 to 60 mil TVL in about the same amount of time. So quite a bit of tremendous growth. They got about 205,000 followers, 183,000 members on Discord, and about 45,000 members on Telegram. So lots of traction, lots of growth. I guess we'll use these guys as an example to talk about good marketing practices. So as you can see, there's design consistency. It's not rocket science, right? Similar colors, similar designs. There needs to be like a base level design that you're kind of working off, typically a template. You want to do this in Illustrator. You want to be able to have a lot of flexibility with the quality, and you want to maintain consistency as you post things, right? Leveraging partners, right? We were able to do this quite successful. The OKX wallet campaign that we did, I think, has about 70, 80,000 participants, which is great. Arcane Capital, which is a VC, ended up giving out a quote. We have a ton of these partnerships posted, like ready to go for the next month, 2 months, and that allows you to get that co-marketing, right? And being able to post about, I think that's AlphaFi over here, like different APYs that you're offering, just gets people excited, right? You're able to bring another company's audience to your project and kind of help yourself grow with that. And then thought leadership and content with substance, right? So talking about Uniswap and their DEX model versus Momentum's DEX model, talking about points programs, talking about leveling up liquidity on SUI and how to make the most with your money. All these sort of pieces of content allow people to align Momentum with thought leadership around DEXs and APYs and making money. And I mentioned numbers. People love numbers. What can I say, right? Whether it's you completing a raise, whether it's you getting traction with users, whether it's you bringing $1.5 billion in total swap volume, or offering 233% APY on USD SUI pools. People love numbers, and regardless of what sector in crypto you are, whether that's NFTs, whether that's infrastructure, whether that's DeFi, AI, you can use numbers and build up traction there. Cool. So I guess that's the end of presentation. This is how multi-chain can help you. We help with capital raise, go to market, mergers and acquisitions. We do a lot of media stuff with Twitter Spaces and podcasts and PR. We can help you with business development and partnerships, and obviously we can help you with marketing and branding. So now we can answer some questions. What's up?
You mentioned that some of the more popular meme coins have some kind of business model behind them. Can you list one example? What kind of business model they're using?
Yeah, so Bonk has 21 contributors, and they didn't just get to $1 billion, 2 billion market cap, 3 billion market cap just by chance, right? The amount of coordination that they did with investors, the amount of coordination that they did with marketing campaigns. I don't know if you know, Bonk had a whole campaign at EDC, right? They had a whole that big ass dog, 30 feet dog, that they've been bringing around the world. That's all thought through, right? It's not simple. It's not just they came out of nowhere and they became successful, right? There's tremendous amounts of planning, tremendous amount of capital exposure. I think they literally have their own shipping container that they bring the dog with around the world.
Yeah, so
right?
that's in terms of marketing, but what's their business model? What's their revenue generation?
Have you heard of BonkBot?
I have, but I haven't looked that deep into
Yeah.
it. So where are they generating that money from?
Yeah,
How much
BonkBot,
to
I think at one point was making over $1 million in fees plus a day. So I would arguably one of the most successful Solana trading bots that a lot of people were using. And I mean, they have a ton of innovations. I think they were doing sports betting stuff. They have their own swap, so I guess they have their own DEX in a sense. They have the trading bot, and then they have a couple different suites of products. but it's through these suites of products that they're able to make tremendous amounts of revenue, right? And then they do a bunch of buybacks and burns. I don't know the exact number, but I'm sure it's in the trillions of tokens that they've burned over the last couple years. Yeah. So yeah, a lot more goes behind the scenes than one would assume, right? Because you'd think like meme coin,
Yeah, for sure. It looks
project.
like all of a sudden this is something that hit with everyone and now it's big. But I do have an understanding that there's a lot of effort put behind the scenes, that it's almost like all the partnerships have been lined up before, all the marketing has been lined up before, and it's not something that just is made out of thin air.
Oh, 100%. I mean, Bonk, after the airdrop, dropped a lot in value, and then had like the most insane, tremendous growth over a span of the year, right? So it's not like that just like happened. The amount of like coordination effort that went through that was probably tremendous, right? But for the amount of effort, the reward is there, right? So the more you take it seriously, the amount of strategic effort and energy that you put in, you have a higher chance of getting things back, right? But even that's not guaranteed. There's a lot of business people, there's a lot of founders that put tremendous amount of effort that just don't get much, right? And that's why marketing isn't enough, right? You have to understand the fundamentals and build good relationships, build strategic partnerships, leverage other projects that are trendy, and try to get some mind share for your own project. There's like a lot that goes on behind the scenes. But yeah, that was a great question. Anyone else? Fib, you got a question for me?
You've seen teams make when moving from a builder chain to Solana.
Ooh. I mean, we see that all the time, right? Like Doodles just did a token launch on Solana. No hate for those guys, but yeah, you have to understand the audience. All these different ecosystems and different chains. So her question was, what's like a common pitfall when projects move blockchains, typically coming into Solana? There's a lot of every blockchain has its key players. Every blockchain has its main characters, key opinion leaders, and different projects that have a lot of sway, right? So if you're coming into an ecosystem, you probably want to be able to get into conversations with these key players and be strategic with how you're coming into the ecosystem, right? It doesn't matter how big you were in Ethereum or Polygon or whatever. Like when you come into Solana, it's a whole different ballgame, right? So being mindful of that, creating those strategic partnerships ahead of time, being very mindful of how you integrate yourself, rewarding the right communities and creating those relationships is probably what's going to help you. Yeah. There's no perfect, this is you do these 5 things and you can come into Solana, no problem. But if you understand the ecosystem, you spend a lot of time doing research, you hop on some Twitter spaces, listen to the actual audience members that are participating in Solana, you'll probably have a higher chance than someone who's coming in blindly.
At what stage should a Web3 business start the business relationship with you guys?
Ranges. We work with late stage projects that have a token out for 3 years, like Pit, and we work with pre-TG clients like Momentum, right? So depending on what we can kind of support you guys with and what stage you are, it's just going to be a different set of help that we can do, right? So yeah, if you're super early stage, we might just give you some consultation, give you some direction, and maybe make some introductions, and that's about it. Whereas if you're 3 months before TGE, then there's a tremendous amount of work that needs to be done, right? So it's going to be very different. Yeah, we're always happy to hop on a call, give some free consultations. So.
Yeah, I believe you're a mentor, right?
Yep. So myself, Ali, who's our head of BD, and Nero, who's our CEO, are mentors for Colosseum. So anyone who is participating in Colosseum, you guys can come ask us any questions. What's up?
Yeah. What are some new trends that you see in the market standpoint?
New trends I've seen from a marketing standpoint. Honestly, I've noticed a lot more companies leveraging SEO and Google Analytics a lot more than they used to. And that's a whole hidden-ish area that a lot of people don't talk about in Web3 marketing because it doesn't really come off top of mind, right? You're thinking like KOLs, you're thinking like Twitter Spaces, you're thinking like PR. But the truth is, like, if you want long-term sustainability, for example, like building a DEX, right? You want to be able to fight for keywords, right? You want to be able to gain mindshare through SEO. You want to be able to get your authority score up and build the right backlinks and build the right pieces of content so that people can organically find your website, right? So that's something I've been noticing more and more, especially with companies that are getting a little bit bigger. I've also noticed people have been using LinkedIn a lot more. That's another trend, especially targeting towards Web2 audiences, especially when there's good positive market movement, right? Every time we see Bitcoin break 100K, every time we see, upwards momentum and trajectory, there's a lot of Web2 people that are looking at crypto. So if you curate the right pieces of content focused towards a Web2 audience, you might be able to get upticks of usage and audiences during those periods of an up market. And last but not least, what was I thinking about? LinkedIn. Ooh, it slips my mind. I'll get back to you if I remember. That was the third point I forgot. Cool. What's up?
Yeah, for the first initial customer, because for every business, we need to find our most loyal group, which kind of platform or what's the form of communication should we have to keep them stay on the platform?
Yeah, so her question was when you're trying to find your additional initial kind of community members and loyal supporters, like how you kind of go by that, is that right? Yeah, so these IRL events are great, right? Coming to these IRL events and talking to people and pitching your idea to them is people and getting feedback is good because you're going to get honest feedback because they don't really know you that well or whatever, and you're just going to be honest about it, right? Going to mentors is always good, right? So hackathon mentors, getting information from your investors, anyone friends and family who are willing to invest in you. If anyone's willing to give you money, you bet your ass they're going to have some opinions as to what you could do better or whatever it is, right? Sometimes those opinions might be aggressive because they want to get their exit. So you got to filter it with take it with a grain of sand in a sense. But being able to talk to your investors and pitch them different ideas, especially if they're experienced investors who've been in the space for a long time, they can give you a lot of insights, right? And the more diverse your cap table is, and the more strategic investors you have or strategic supporters you have, the greater exposure you're going to get of different areas that can help you succeed, right? So example, if you have a big KOL, they might give you information on market trends and what's hot right now with KOLs. If you have a big VC that's doing a bunch of portfolio investments in the AI sector, they're probably going to have a much more greater knowledge set around the AI sector than you do, for example. So leveraging the people that support your project and their strengths and weaknesses, I guess mostly their strengths, is going to allow you to get feedback you need. And then just talking to people. If you're just building alone in isolation, you're probably not going to get the feedback that you need to succeed, right? Because you're just going to be talking to your team and it's kind of just like a closed silo. If you check out my product market fit presentation, I talk a lot about that, right? No project can be successful if they're just building in silence, because you might spend 7-8 months building something that no one gives a shit about, right?
Yeah.
So being able to quickly iterate, being able to make demos, being able to make really short kind of developments to showcase your product and quickly get feedback and iterate is probably going to be a more successful method than for you to just build and then change afterwards.
Just a follow-up question, because currently I'm doing everything on Twitter. I just want to confirm that's a good platform to be initially launching my project and so on.
Yeah, I mean, Twitter's it was one of the things I mentioned. Twitter is the best marketing area, right? But you have to understand what it's for, right? It's for releasing information to communities, community building, building out your brand presence. Like on the Twitter comments, you're probably not going to get feedback about your product. You might get some hate, right? Or you know, they'll be like, oh, your product is so cool or whatever, right? But it's not constructive, right? So use Twitters to give you like an idea of how you're kind of performing in the sense of mind share and growing your marketing. But if you want real feedback on what you're building, you're going to get that in closed conversations. What's up?
So I've been testing out paid ads on, let's say, Twitter, Telegram, different forums, like, you know, going into groups. They have their own payment method.
Yes.
You pay them, they post, all that stuff. What's the best approach to marketing other than just posting your own content on Twitter? Is it the KOLs? Is it Twitter paid ads? Is it Telegram paid ads? And what kind of CPC or CPM would one expect?
So that's a good question. He's talking about paid ads and different avenues of marketing. You always want to test. And also, you want to find like the best person in your sector that you want to be like and try to figure out their split. That's the easiest way for you to understand, like, for example, like if you're a trading bot, right? And there's a trading bot company that's absolutely killing it. Then you can probably get an idea of exactly what they're doing currently to get their growth. Or you can do a 1 month historical analysis of the things that they launched in the last month and what kind of marketing campaigns they did. Obviously, you have to have like a discerning eye for that. So you'd probably assign that to someone who has marketing experience and knowledge for them to go do that historical research in a sense. But by understanding what those guys are doing, you'll probably get a better idea of what your split should be. And then if you want to try new things, you should try that too, right? So if you have $1,000 that you want to spend on Twitter ads, you want to be able to like obviously understand what Twitter ads are working from crypto companies and then test some Twitter ads to see what the implication of that is, right? When we're doing like PR campaigns, when we're doing like Twitter spaces and all these sort of things, for every single campaign that we execute, we're checking back-end stats to see how effective it is. And based on how effective things are, you're going to either spend more money towards those things that work, and you're probably going to spend less money on things that don't work, right? There's no like, you do this and you're 100% successful, especially not in crypto. But there is like, it's a coordination of everything, right? You need to use KOLs to some extent because they have a lot of sway and a lot of clout, right? You want to be able to use PR because that's going to get you a lot of exposure and it's going to help you build your SEO. Right, you want to be able to use Twitter Spaces because that's going to give you organic information. Even for you, hop on a Twitter Spaces, talk about your idea, and see how people react to it. I guarantee you they're going to talk a lot more shit on Twitter Spaces than they will on the Twitter comments. But some of that shit talking might actually help you, right? And there's a couple Twitter Spaces that are just like a hot panel or something where you can go and pitch your idea and they'll give you honest feedback. We used to do that way back. It was a lot of fun. Maybe we'll bring it back.
And do you have any ideas about those CPC or CPM rates that you might have been seeing recently?
Varies on sector. Like if you're an AI project versus your trading bot versus your DEX, like the value of a user ranges based on, I guess, what you want them to do, right? So someone like Galaxy, all right, well, I'm not trying to talk shit about Galaxy, but like most of their users aren't like extremely complicated users in a sense, right? They're typically airdrop farmers or, you know, kind of audiences that are looking to get some sort of upside, right? They're not going to do super complicated things for your project. They might give you some vanity numbers and maybe support your project on the back end, right? In terms of like getting your numbers up and getting your basic content created. The cost of that is going to be less than maybe a user who's going to come and do $1 million in swap volume or something. The difference between those two audience members is like heaven and earth, right? So maybe for the guy who's going to give you $2 million in TVL, you're probably going to try to get in a conversation with them and see if they can invest or figure out some sort of deal that makes sense. And it's going to be a lot more important for you as a business if you're a DEX versus you getting 10,000 Galaxy users using your platform.
So the CP, you don't remember?
I don't have the numbers, no.
CPM or CPC? Okay.
Yeah, don't have numbers, not off the top of my head. And yeah, third innovation-ish idea from a marketing perspective that I've been seeing a lot is live content. You know, Skyrise does a good job of this. Bangers does a good job of this. Jakey does a good job of this. People love like seeing the human side of crypto. And I've been seeing a lot of KOLs really pop off from making more like live content in a sense where you see their face and, hey, is a new product that I'm developing or looking into, and these are my opinions sort of thing. People like that a lot. So, and I've been seeing that as like a general trend on like TikTok and Reels and stuff, like the day in the life of a crypto bro or whatever it is. Like you kind of see that sort of coming up. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, just as a follow-up, do you mean that is like vlogging or live streams?
Both.
Both?
Yeah.
Which one would be better?
I think live streams.
It's better?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've been seeing, I know Orange was supposed to be here somewhere, but him and Digi were doing a great job by doing like live stream gambling. People love that shit, right? It's like, you know, let me just go hit the slots or whatever, see me make $1,000, see me lose $10,000 or whatever. People love that. So that's good. If you've seen Hey Anon, they've been using a lot of like hot models to go and like review their AI products. They've been getting roasted a little bit from that, but like, you know, people like seeing that. The impressions are good. It's like a ChatGPT sort of thing for crypto.
So what do they do with it?
Oh, they just paid a bunch of models to go and like review their product.
Oh.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's a lot of different ways to market. What's up?
Yeah, question for Twitter content. Should we say controversies? Like if there's something we're not sure, it's kind of controversial, like commenting on other projects, because we do want to compare ours to other competitors. Should we? Yeah, what do you think about it?
As long as it comes, like, don't be rude.
Okay.
Like, especially if the project that you're comparing yourself to has a very strong audience and a lot of bag holders, you're probably gonna get a lot of backlash, right? So when you're comparing and contrasting, you want to keep yourself neutral. You want to be very objective. It should be very fact-based. You're not just like, hey, user shit because that guy's thing is garbage or whatever, right? Because then it's like not justified. But if you can bring really clear differentiations, like, okay, this is my product, this is the competitor's product, these are 7 points of comparison, and these are all the things that we do, and these are all the things that they don't do. As long as it's objective, I think that's fine. You can also leverage like your KOLs and leverage other people to post content that's a little bit more competitive, because they can be opinionated, but from your main brand, you want to keep a neutral stance. Any question from the audience? Are you here? No? We're good, right?
Yeah.
Any questions from you guys? Can wrap this up.
You said to leverage the founder's account. How do you bridge that to the brand accounts? Is it putting, I don't know, retweeting the tweets from the brand account?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
100%. All of the above. So his question was, with the founder account, how do you connect that with the main brand? Why is the founder's account important? First of all, like, who are people investing in? They're investing in the project, but typically they're investing in the founder, right? So for a founder to be front-facing, for a founder to express their thoughts and opinions and do thought leadership stuff, obviously it's like a double-edged sword. Like when Meow said the N-word or whatever, I'm sure that wasn't too good for Jupiter, right? But at the same time, Armani killing it on Twitter and being a thought leader helps Backpack, right? Merp being, you know, a legend, like, you know, tweeting all these things helps Helios, right? So when you have a strong leader, it helps your project, right? But it's a double-edged sword. So when you're trying to build up your own account as a founder, you want to figure out like how you want to position yourself to help amplify your brand. So you might give your thoughts on, okay, yeah, we reached this stat. Here's actually what happened in the back end. Oh, you know, we did this IRL campaign. Here's my opinions on how this IRL campaign went. You know, we did this PR. Okay, these are some things that were mentioned on the PR that I want to elaborate on. Right? This is what's going on the macro in my sector. This is my thoughts on that sort of stuff and how it impacts my brand. or my company or whatever, right? Like having those sort of like cycles where you're leveraging founders and your brand and keeping that kind of symbiotic relationship is going to help both grow over time. And it like it makes no sense for you as a founder not to have some sort of brand presence, because just like, why not, right? Have someone like helping you on the Twitter side of things and leverage that to grow your company.
Does it make sense to have in the bio of the projects the tag of the founder?
Depends how like good your founder account is, right? Like if your founder account has like 15 followers, probably not that good. Right? But if your founder account's growing like a great audience and getting a lot of mind share, sure. Right? You don't want to detract from your brand, right?
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to like look at the founder's account and say, oh, founder's a loser or something, right? So you want to be careful with that. But yeah, the stronger your brand is and the more your brand grows, the more your core supporters are going to be curious about who's driving the ship. And there's a lot of respect for founders who are able to build successful businesses.
One last thing. Yeah, we were thinking maybe do articles on Twitter, but I was kind of split because of the user attention span. But yeah, do you think it's some form of a form of content that's worth pushing from the main account, like opinions about the industry, the sector we're targeting, and everything? Do something a bit more academic.
Cool. So the question was around articles. I think you should like leverage your articles strategically, right? So if you're doing a long post of content, you can recall that content maybe 3 or 4 times by taking sections of it, right? If you're posting an article on Twitter, what's stopping you from posting the exact same article on Medium, right? What's stopping you from taking that article and then going to like a very cheap backlink and doing some PR, right? Like you want to be strategic on how you leverage your resources so you can make the most out of it, or you want to squeeze your content to get the most you can. So making long form content isn't a bad thing. If you don't use it, it's a waste.
Mm-hmm.
But if you make it and it's good, and people check it out, and you're getting impressions, and you recall that a couple times, one piece of content becomes 5 pieces of content, right? So, and then also test, right? If you make an article about a topic and it gets really good impressions, you could probably make another article about that topic first. If it doesn't, then probably don't mention it again. Right? Yeah, let's try something else.
Thank you.
Cool. What's our time? Almost at an hour. I think we're good. Let's thanks for hopping on the stream. Thanks for joining me live in person. I appreciate you guys.
And we have another workshop at 12 p.m. We're going to take a brief break because we've been in here for an hour. If you want to stretch your legs, feel free to come back or stay in the room. It is a workshop specifically for the hackathon, improving your pitch and your submission, recapping what the Coliseum team said, as well as key points from my previous workshops. So please come out. Thank you so much. And if you need to connect with MCA, talk to me. I'll make an intro.
Oh yeah, there you go. We got the thank you slide.
Thank
Peace
you.
out.